Hello, Minecraftians, and welcome to another episode of Realm News. I am your host, the one and only, the Dark Lord, the one who puts the real in Realm and expands your mind one block at a time. And I am here today to talk about one of the harshest Minecraft biomes, and that would be considered the Badlands. In fact, I am broadcasting to you today from my Badlands outpost that is also referred to as Depot X. Ooh, kind of sounds spooky, huh? No, it just happened to be called Depot X because I alphabetized all my depots, and that's just what this happened to land on. But very convenient. Sounds great for this desolate place. And Depot X is no exception to being connected to my railroads. My whole realm is connected to a railroad system, as I said in previous episodes. But Railroad X is at the end of the line, out here past the Great Farthian Desert. It sits on top of a gold mine outpost where I mine for gold to use for power rail construction. I will give this away right now. There is gold up in those hills, guys. That's what attracted me to this biome, was all the gold, the prospect of gold. Just like in the 1800s, you know, that everybody rushing out towards California. Well, I rushed into the Badlands to find gold. But there is much more than gold to see out here. In fact, I would be tempted to say that this biome has the most beautiful geology out of all the other biomes. The brilliant array of terracotta bands of all colors, and the red sand that blankets the bottoms of the Badlands. Those are just a couple examples of this picturesque landscape. You could make a postcard out of the scenery that I witness. It is a sight to see. So I want to take you on a journey into the Badlands and its sub-biomes, such as the Eroded Badlands and the Wooded Badlands. Those are two of the sub-biomes that accompany this magnificent biome. It's massive, so it makes sense that there's a couple little ones to break it. I am also going to break down the minerals found here that make up this biome, and the ones that formed in the real Badlands, the Badlands National Park in South Dakota, to be precise. This will mark the third episode on the harshest biomes. Yes, if you have not caught on, yours truly, the Dark Lord here, created a trilogy of 3 of the harshest biomes in the overworld. If you remember, we first started this trilogy off with the snowy biomes. Then we moved on to the desert biomes out in the Great Farthian Desert on last week's episode. Now we finish with the majestic Badlands biome. So I hope you still have your armor on from all the previous 2 adventures. I hope you're still carrying that bed, the torches, tools, food, and all that survival gear. Now jump back into that minecart and let's go to the Badlands. Hey everyone, you know what part of the hour it is? It's poll time! Yes, it is poll time. And I love this part of the show, guys. Getting to hear everyone's feedback and input makes me excited. This was just a simple yes or no poll question this week, guys. Nothing elaborate, nothing too fancy. Sorry to let you down. Just a yes or no. But these are also fun as well. It is related to last week's episode that was titled The Great Farthian Desert. let me just tell you the question that I posed right off the bat. I asked the people, I am curious to know if you believe that the desert temples were erected to honor the creeper. Very simple question from a simple dark lord. Allow me to read the results. I wish I had that drum roll. I need to do that. I'll hire a drummer one day. We had a grand total on this poll of 17 votes. I know it's not the largest turnout, but hey, there's no small turnouts for these polls. Not in my book. And I have to say, the people have spoken. I shall announce the winner of this with 58.8% of the vote, coming to 10 votes. The people said, drumroll, yes. And you probably have already guessed that I agree. The desert temple was indeed built to honor or worship the creeper. You guys know I've been a proponent of that because I came up with that theory. And so let me go on over here to the next, the no people. They had a 41% of the votes in this poll. Otherwise, that translates to 7 people. 7 of the votes were casted in favor of no. It wasn't, I would not consider that blowout. 7 no's and 10 yeses, but still a victory for yes. And I have been saying, as I said, since episode 1 in the titled The Creeper's Cloak, that the creepers were worshipped by the ancient builders and that the faith was passed along. When the villagers found these deserted temples with all the creeper insignia carved into the buildings, in the sandstone that I described even in the last week's episode, I was telling you guys about all that, with the Ankh signs and everything in the desert temples. Well, I also mentioned the sandstone, the creeper insignia carved on the exterior and interior. Well, those villagers would have associated that, the creeper etching in that sandstone being a creature of power, and they began to worship it as well. And that's seen as proof on, just go check out the Cleric's Cloak in episode 1 and listen to last week's episode. I go into detail about that, about the creeper quite a bit. And you'll probably hear me talk more about the creeper. He is very prolific in this game. But go listen to episode 1, people, if you're just now hearing this. It was a very interesting episode. Anyways, I want to read a couple comments from some Minecraftians who commented on this poll. I will start with a fellow called The Confused 46 from Reddit. They go on to state on this poll, they left a comment, and they said they probably made the creepers there too. Smiley face, end quote. And I thought about that for a bit. And I see back when I was making Cleric's Cloak, I mentioned that the ancient builders probably manipulated the creepers into weapons to extinguish the zombies in order to get rid of the zombie virus and keep the zombies at bay. And so the TNT is very important because it's implanted in the creeper. So I also, in the back of my head, was wondering where they would develop this, but the Confused 46 kind of poses a good question, or makes a good point. Maybe they did make them in these temples that they worshipped them in. Perhaps they did implant the creepers with TNT there in those sacred halls. Maybe they converted these places of worship into places of weaponry for last minute defense measures against this apocalyptic scenario. It would explain the vast amounts of TNT in the secret rooms that I described in last week's episode, and the gunpowder and the suspicious sand that you can excavate in archaeology with the brush in this game. Yeah, maybe they did weaponize them in these ancient buildings. I'll leave that for you people. They threw that gauntlet down, so will somebody run with that? Thanks for that thought, the Confused 46. I really I appreciate that. That really made me think for a bit. Next, I had another comment from a Redditor that goes by biohazard_Beth. They went on to say, quote, I never thought about it until now, but it makes sense. Real world and fantasy temples usually have who or what they worship painted, carved on the temples, and there's usually statues around too. So creeper worship sounds plausible. End quote. I am glad you think so, because I don't think it could be more apparent myself. You guys know that by now. I probably shouldn't even elaborate much more. But biohazard_Beth makes a great point and connection. On human Earth, it's everywhere. If you're a human, you can see this in your local community more than likely. We can see temples erected and dedicated to hundreds of dead religions throughout history. Those are just in history books and around the world, but also those living ones that you can find in your communities today. Those religious buildings, all the shrines and statues and the making of symbols depicting religions and of God and gods. So I ask, why would this be different in the game, right? I say it is not. But this is just my humble opinion, and I would love to hear yours. And I will have a new link with a bio link at the bottom of my description. That'll have all my subreddits and everything on one that you can go check out, and you can comment in my subreddit, which is Realm News in Reddit, and my X links and everything. So yeah, just comment in the comment section also at the bottom of the show, folks. I'd love to hear from you. And also thank you, biohazard_Beth, for that comment. And the Confused 46 again for those great responses. Keep them coming. Now moving on, folks, I want to get into the subject of the show. Let's delve into the Badlands. (1868, 72, -981). Those are the coordinates at which I am standing right now. At Depot X Badlands Crater. Not terribly far from my point of origin, honestly. If you think about it, that's just 2,500 blocks away from where I started. But it took months of kingdom building before I stepped foot upon this red sand terrain, and to be where I am standing talking to you right now. It was right after the Sun King discovered the natural desert village now named Santa Fe. Santa Fe is situated roughly 130 blocks or more from my desert outpost in the Great Farthian Desert, if you recall that from the last week's episode. I bring up Santa Fe again in this episode because it is a unique town. I didn't tell you everything about this town. I was saving part of it for this episode. Well, it sits on the edge of where desert joins the Badlands. Like two puzzle pieces coming together. Almost like if you were to imagine tectonic plates meeting. You can see the border of the two conjoining biomes where sand meets red sand, the two contrasting colors. Santa Fe is where I met the Badlands for the first time. And the first time I saw it, it was beautiful. Santa Fe is unique because it has a huge terracotta hoodoo overlooking it. And I bequeathed this hoodoo, this natural beauty, a national park in my realm. Yes, I said hoodoo with an H, not voodoo with a V. I know that sounds crazy. Maybe some of you listeners have heard this term. Maybe you guys are in that area, that geographic area where hoodoos exist. I for one, never heard of a hoodoo until I researched this, but I love the term. So let me explain what a hoodoo is. I can't quit saying that word. However, let me go on with this. These exist in nature, if you didn't get the picture of me saying that. And according to Wikipedia on hoodoos, they are tall, thin spires of rock which were formed from erosion, also referred to as tent rocks, fairy chimneys, and earth pyramids. I thought those were interesting. I love those names for these spires, guys. That gives me ideas, like just so many ideas on what to name my towns that I plan on building in the Badlands once I get established there. Like, for example, Tent Rock City or Hoodoo City. I'm definitely doing my first one's going to be Hoodoo City. Let me go on. It appears that hoodoo is a North American term according to this Wikipedia article right here that I found. And I'm going to put that in the show description like you guys all know I always do. However, let me keep going on here. This name hoodoo derived from hoodoo spirituality, which I've never heard of that. Have you guys? This is a belief, let me see here. This is a belief that naturally formed objects possess certain powers. Wow, I think that's just really cool. Some Native Americans believe that some of these hoodoos, specifically, they use this example in Bryce Canyon National Park. Anyways, these Native Americans believe that these hoodoos there were petrified beings of the past and that they were imprisoned for misbehavior. That's awesome. That is awesome. I can't wait to incorporate all this stuff into my headcanon and lore in my realm, my Armadillo realm. Let me get on to how tall these can get, guys. These spires of rock that I just described, these hoodoos, they can be as tall as the average guy, or they can get up to as tall as a 10-story building. Now let me think of my construction days. 10 stories comes out to be about 100 feet. Exactly. Can you imagine a 100-foot spire of rock? I think that would be amazing to see. Who would have known? What a word too. I love that. I can't wait to create a hoodoo city. And the Terracotta Hoodoo overlooking Santa Fe is just one of the most beautiful natural landmarks that I have discovered in my realm. The Badlands, as I have described, are composed of a myriad of terracotta blocks that form a beautiful geological contrast of pastels. And I'm not kidding. It just looks amazing, guys, especially with that red sand surface. It's just the most picturesque, almost the most picturesque biome, I think, in the game. I know, like, the cherry trees, that biome is beautiful, and those colors are unique, but this, to me, there's no other comparison, really. It is a dangerous biome, but at least you'll die with a view. But, again, it is nothing in comparison to the real deal, guys. And I'm referring to the Badlands National Park in South Dakota. I want to talk about the geologic formations that are there in the United States. Before we settle back into Minecraft Badlands and its sub-biomes, it is worth me bringing up the Badlands National Park that lie in South Dakota, United States. As a wee Dark Lord, my brother and I, along with our dad, we visited Mount Rushmore up there in South Dakota. Now, I was quite young, but I do remember one thing: desolation. It was one of the most sparse places I have been through or visited. I do not quite recall seeing any majestic, quote-unquote, hoodoos or really the badlands themselves. At least not the images that I see in these beautiful photos that are online, which I will post as a link in the description page. And I found these photos in the nps.gov link that I'm going to go into here in a moment. I also, though, remember it being an amazing trip, and researching this has made me want to return. I would like to start off with a fun fact about the Badlands to begin this. A fact that I found on my trusty source, www.nps.gov, and this is titled Geologic Formations, and that was put out on November 10th of 2020. It goes on to say, quote, "The Badlands formations have a lifespan of approximately 1 million years. They erode at about 1 inch a year," end quote. Wow, I thought that was just pretty dang interesting and kind of sad to me at the same time. I guess all things erode in the sands of time, but these are works of art by Mother Nature, truly. If you were to look at these photos, they're amazing. I mean, just looking at them in the game, it's amazing. Well, just imagine that in real life, even more so. It's just sad to know that they'll erode and not be there one day, I guess. You know, that's a sad thing to me, even though I won't be around. I don't think I'll be around. The article goes on to explain that with this erosion rate, the scientists estimate that the Badlands will cease to exist in around 500,000 years. So yeah, I will not be around. I know I said that the Badlands have a lifespan of 1 million years, but I didn't mention that the erosion rate began 500,000 years ago. So they are already halfway through their lifespan, if that makes sense. The article also goes on to explain that Badlands are formed in a two-step process, which is actually quite interesting. How they were formed is interesting, and then I'll be getting into that. So this two-step process occurs with deposition, which is the placement of material, right? And erosion, everybody's heard of that. And that's the opposite of deposition. That's the taking away of material. So we got the opposite of, we got the placement and then deplacement of material. Deposition of the Badlands took place approximately 75 million years ago. And that ended around 25 million years ago when, let me see here, that ended 25 million years ago and that was composed back then of shallow inland seas and wind and rivers. That all helped with this deposition process. And as I said, that erosion started 500,000 years ago. And the erosion, that is due to a couple things. That was due to specifically the Cheyenne River and White Rivers carving away at that landscape over time. Another cool fact that I found on this National Park Service website was that there are two Badlands. Badlands and Badlands. Did you hear the difference when I said that? Let me say it again. Now listen. Badlands. Badlands. Did you hear it now? Of course not. Because one is with a capital B, which are the Badlands I am currently talking about in this section of the episode, the ones in South Dakota. And then there's the Badlands with the undercase B. I didn't mean to trick you guys like that. Sounds confusing, right? Well, let me explain what they describe in this article. The uppercase Badlands, right, is the geographic location. But the Badlands with the lowercase b is the geologic term. And this geologic term is used to describe places on Earth that resemble the Badlands National Park in South Dakota, if that makes sense. Like, so if you once you look at these photos, which are that you'll see they're similar to the Badlands in the game. So just think of the Badlands in the game, right? So the scientists, or the geologists, I should say, describe places that look like those, similar. They aren't exactly the same, of course, but it's just as a describer. And there are badlands all across the globe, and I didn't realize this. I thought, to my American self, thinking was, oh, they're just in South Dakota, because I've been there. But they're all across the globe, and I'll get into a few places starting here in the United States. Let me just name a few here. Utah is a state, which I've been there. I should have known. I'm pretty sure I've seen those badlands there. And then Nebraska, and specifically Toadstool Geologic Park in Nebraska. Who would have known? That's next door to me. I need to go check that one out. Also, there's North Dakota, which kind of makes sense to me because South Dakota's right there, so maybe that just sprawls up into North Dakota. But their park there is called the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. There's also Colorado. There's Arizona, and their national park in Arizona is called the Petrified Forest National Park, which sounds really interesting to me, actually. And in other countries such as Canada, New Zealand, Italy, and Argentina. I want to go visit all those places. You guys want to buy me a ticket, one of you listeners? I would love to go check out one of these places. Buy me an airline ticket, and I'll be right there. It's kind of my bucket list of mine to go see all the national parks. I need to get started, though. Now, let's talk a bit about those vibrant layers or bands found in the rock formations that you've probably seen in the game, right? Well, I'm going to go ahead and describe those in the real deal, the Badlands with the capital B. Also, go check this article out after the podcast. It's really informative. Now, they go on to describe how these different colored bands came to be. And the bottom layer of the formation, which this makes perfect sense, is the oldest part, right? And the top part of this geological formation is the youngest because deposition stacked. Which, I mean, that's pretty cool to think that nature just over time deposited, just slowly stacked on top of each other. It says that the bottommost layer of the national park is called the Pierre Shale. This shale formed 79 million years ago, and it was made in an ancient shallow sea. And if you want to know a creepy fact about this ancient shallow sea, well, it was a home for a monster called the mosasaur. A giant marine reptile capable of growing up to 50 foot long, or for metric folks out there, 15.24 meters. Wow. I would not wanted to have crossed paths with this creature. That would have been scary. It doesn't sound like it would have been a pleasant fellow. I can't even imagine. Jeez. Well, moving on top of the Pierre shell are these yellow mounds that I found in this article on nps.gov. And I thought that was kind of an interesting term, yellow mounds. Those are the yellow Dijon mustard-colored terracotta that you will see in the Badlands biome in Minecraft. If you've seen those yellow bands, they're kind of towards the top, I guess. Not towards the bottom, like not right above the Pierre shell in our game, but those are the yellow mounds. And here, let me get to this. Is kind of a fun part. Geologists call these yellow mounds, and this is a little bit more technical. They call them paleosols, or paleosols. I'm sorry, paleosols, and these are ancient fossilized soil preserved in the fossil record. That's just really intriguing to me. I feel like a kid again doing research for this episode, reading about all the fossils like the mosasaur and now the paleosols. I used to love paleontology as a kid, and I don't know, it just kind of brought the kid back out in me doing this research. I think it's very neat and amazing now that I can call those yellow terracotta blocks in the game now paleosols. Hey, now you can tell your friends I was out in the Badlands collecting paleosols for a building project. I think that's just neat, right? I mean, the more knowledge, the better, right, guys? Now on to the Chadron Formation. What a powerful name, Chadron. Maybe I'll name a town that out there too in the game, in my realm. The Chadron Formation is on top of these yellow mounds, and the Chadron formed around 37 million years ago in an ancient floodplain. They speculate that the environment at this time must have been hot and wet. They say alligators roamed here once, and it was very similar to the Everglades, which blows my mind that South Dakota was similar to the Everglades. That's just hard for me to wrap my mind around. Could you imagine alligators just swimming around up there? Let's move on to the Brule Formation. Now, this one came, and remember guys, these are just stacked on top of each other. I'm moving from the Pierre shell up, from the bottom up. So the Brule Formation came around 34 million years ago. And this was an open savanna, much different than the Chadron that I just previously mentioned. And this had grasses and plants and a bunch of other flora grew here. Sounds a little bit similar to the woodland badlands in Minecraft that I will I will describe later in this podcast. And the wooded badlands are kind of similar to the savanna, but higher up in elevation, I should just say. Now, let's move on to last but not least, the youngest part of the geological formation. And that would be the Sharps Formation, which, by the way, I thought that was an interesting name. Sharps Formation, another city name for you guys to use. Sharptown, Sharpville. This formed around 30 million years ago, and the article goes on to explain that the base of the Sharps Formation consists of a rocky forward ash, which is a type of tuff or volcanic material. Tuff. Does that sound familiar, guys? Should. If it does, it is because we can find it in the game. Tuff, according to Duncan Geere, who wrote the article called The Block of the Week, Tuff, on September 21st, 2021, and you can find that on Minecraft.net, goes on to describe that tuff is a compressed volcanic ash turned to stone. And I'm happy to know that now, because I did not realize that this soft block, this stuff, was stone. I know that was a lot of description, but it explains a lot of the geology of the game, I thought. And I think the developers did a great job, in my opinion, of mimicking the beauty of these geologic oddities. I found this research to be extremely fascinating, and I urge you guys to go read the full article and check out these photos. And they're just simply amazing. Really go check this stuff out I provide for you guys. Now, let's get back into Minecraft. We are now back in my depot in the Badlands Crater. I want to go on to describe the materials and the creatures that can be found in this biome. If you remember from earlier and previous episodes, I have mentioned that the Badlands is a treasure trove of gold. You can see this ore just sticking out of the ground, just ripe for the picking. Depot X is connected to a mine that was built solely for gold extraction, and it has produced a lot. I just want to exaggerate this to you because I'm not even exaggerating. This is not an exaggeration. I just want to express this to you because you guys need to go find one, because that's where the gold is at. If you want gold, that's where you need to go, unless you plan on doing some industrial farming techniques, which I haven't delved into that part yet. If I was a guess, though, off the top of my head, I'll just give you guys a picture of how much gold I have more than what I've already built, but I have a surplus. But if I was to give you guys an idea, I would have to say that I have a rail system of consisting around 6,000 to 7,000 track. That equals out to 200, 225 power rails that I have produced thanks to the Badlands. They have connected my entire empire, which stretches thousands of meters or blocks across. Yeah, it's no exaggeration there, guys. Now, hold on. Before you pause the podcast and go mine for gold or go searching for a badland biome, I have a lot more to say about this landscape. Besides the gold, the majority of this place consists of a whole plethora of terracotta and red sand that I need to explain to you guys, so you know how to best utilize these resources that lay about this biome. Terracotta is about as fun of a block as it is to say. Seriously, terracotta does not just bring a natural beauty to the Badlands, but it can be put in a furnace and glazed into a multitude of different patterns and colors and bring a beauty to your builds. In fact, according to this article titled Java Edition 1.12 Minecraft Wiki, terracotta did not used to be called terracotta in this game. Fun fact, guys, it once was called hardened clay. I don't know if you guys been playing that long, but some of you may remember that. I don't remember that. And it was first introduced in the Java Edition 1.6.1 on July 1st, 2013. That was the year I was introduced to this game. So yay. 1.61 brought to us the hardened clay and the 16 colors of stained clay, as they called it. Stained clay. I don't recall this, guys. I don't. I'm going to have to ask my brother, the Sun King, about that, if he recalls that, which you'll be able to find in our interview on the next week's episode. I'm interviewing the Sun King. Just want to let you guys know that you finally will hear from the king himself. So the 16 color system came into play then, guys, and you could stain your clay one of those colors. So let's flash forward a few years to June 7th, 2017. Do you remember those days? Gosh, time is going by. And hardened clay on June 7th, 2017, and stained hardened clay has now transformed into being called terracotta. That's the day it all became to what we know now. I thought that was all of just a very interesting history of the block. And I like giving the history behind some of these blocks in these episodes if you can't tell. I hope you guys enjoy those little facts. Now, in the Badlands, you will not be able to overlook the terracotta. It'd be impossible to overlook the terracotta. All the hills, pretty much the surface, if it's not red sand, underneath the red sand is terracotta. Everything's literally made of it. The terracotta comes naturally in a variety of colors, and I want to list off these colors to you, so you people that are at work or doing chores or just going about your business, listening to this podcast in the background. Sorry, I can't talk. This podcast in the background, you'll be able to hear and envision what colors that I am seeing in this game. And I am looking at a variety of terracotta in these colors of red, orange, yellows, whites, light gray, and brown. According to Wiki on terracotta, again, on Minecraft Wiki, there are that total of 16 colors, as I said, right? That has not changed since being introduced into the game. Another cool fact, though, terracotta, just so if you guys are musicians out there, terracotta placed under a note block will make the instrument sound of a bass drum. I thought that was neat, and I haven't tried that yet. I'm still playing with note blocks, and I will cover note blocks and other music in an episode. In fact, I really plan on doing that one sometime in the future, and I'm excited about that. You can also make your own terracotta, I want to go on to explain. And to let you know that I have 2 terracotta factories in my realm. And I'm proud to say my first one was in my capital city of Armadillo, the whole entire realm. And if you guys haven't got this by now, Sea Town is my largest city, my first city, and is pretty much deemed the entire flagship city of my entire realm that is called Armadillo. And it only consists of being able to produce about, 5 clay blocks at a time, which I can turn into terracotta. And my second terracotta factory is located in Jonestown. And Jonestown has a setup of producing 10 clay blocks right now at a time, and thus being able to render out 10 terracotta blocks, and I can turn those into glazed. And I love terracotta. I love to make terracotta because, when you glaze them, they make very neat patterns that you can use for builds. It adds so much to the architecture, in my opinion. In fact, I want to go on to tell you about my girlfriend, Gaia Divine, and her embassy that's in she has a district called the Gaia Divine Embassy District. I give my brother, the Sun King, and I gave my girlfriend, Gaia Divine, their own embassies, which are pretty much districts, living areas of their kingdoms. So when they are in their own personal realm and they visit mine, they have their own place to carry on over their lore and headcanon into my game. And vice versa, I have my own town called Jasos in the Sun King's Farthia realm. So I think that's really cool. Well, she built an entire shopping center and houses for the employees, and she incorporated a bunch of glazed terracotta blocks to enhance the aesthetic value of all this. She even added amethyst crystals for doorbells and organized all the goods into compartments and little areas like a marketplace, a 2-story building of terracotta and different colored concrete blocks. It's an amazing build that she did. And even the workers' houses look immaculate. Mine, when I build cities, they look so draconian and gothic and so medieval and drab compared to her builds. She did a knockout job. Now, if you want to make your own terracotta, I will teach you how. If you locate a source of clay, which I'm going to go on to describe where you can find some of these, those can typically be found in shallow seas, I've noticed, and apparently swamps. I'm sure you guys have came across swamps in your realm, and you've probably noticed while swimming out in those places, maybe collecting those lily pads, at the bottom, a different colored block, kind of how can I describe it? Like a ceramic plate, right? Well, that is clay, and that can be found very often in the swamplands. I find a lot of clay in Jonestown Swamp and around Charmois City, which is a swamp area. Also in my Newfoundland province, because most of my world, it apparently is swamp. It's like a water world where I live. A lot of swamps and jungle, and so I have a lot of clay at my disposal. So dig up that clay if you have it, or if you just have it, go ahead and put it in your furnace. And put in some charcoal or wood or anything flammable, and then place that clay in that clay block in the top slot. It takes 4 pieces of clay. You're going to have to put those back together after mining it. So you're going to have to go and lump those 4 little balls of clay to make a block of clay, and you'll put that in the top slot of the furnace, and it will start to smelt that clay block. This will transform it into a terracotta block. And terracotta is much more blast resistant than it is in clay form. And so that's useful to know. You can just go ahead and harden that. And if you are looking for something, I can't imagine all you had was clay, but if you needed to make that clay harder for your build to keep creeper blowing up your stuff, then I guess you can go ahead and use terracotta as a more blast resistant block. A beautiful looking one. And that's where I'm going to get into staining that terracotta block. So you can go ahead and stain that terracotta block, if I can talk, with a color of dye of your choice. Remember those 16 colors? Well, go ahead and use a color from, find a flower and apply that to this terracotta block. And place that stained terracotta block and put it back into the furnace, that top slot again, like I told you to put the clay to begin with. And you will begin to smelt that block again. Yeah, I know this is a whole process. It's kind of an expensive block because you have to smelt it essentially twice, right? You have to put the clay in there, and then you got to stain the terracotta block and then put it back in. It's a little time consuming, but it's worth it. This time, when you put that terracotta block, that stain, you're going to put through the glazing process, which is almost like a caterpillar type of transformation from cocoon to a beautiful winged butterfly. From old plain terracotta, now it will be a glazed terracotta, and it'll be a beautiful pattern that you can display in a specific build or wherever. I think that's just really neat, guys, that we have the ability in this digital game to take raw material and transform it in a similar process that we have to do on Earth in putting a little bit of effort to make something beautiful. I think that's just awesome. So go put those in your builds, please. My two terracotta factories, I just want to tell you how they operate a little bit, so maybe you can get some ideas of building your own, okay? I use dripstone tech, or technology, to, let me explain, to make clay from dirt blocks for when I do not have natural clay reserves, because Seatown sits in a deep ocean, and I don't want to swim down to find clay, and it's not close to any cities, really. I mean, not any that possess clay reserves. So I have to import dirt blocks and make my own clay and then render that clay into terracotta or brick of my choosing. Well, I use, as I said, dripstone technology to make clay from dirt, which is very useful. And I'll tell you how. You can find dripstone in dripstone cave biomes. And these caves, from what I read, generate kind of far inland and not around coastal areas, and that's where I found mine, and that's where I always find mine, are inland. So it's kind of nice to confirm that with online people saying that, yeah, they're inland usually. You're not going to find these just on the coast, people. And I found that in Wiki. I will post that as well. Now, I placed the dripstone myself 3 blocks high, and this is the dripstone block, not the dripstone itself. I put the block about 3 blocks high on a wall of my building. Let's say my terracotta factory, right? Or clay factory, wherever you want to call it. And then underneath that dripstone block, I connect the dripstone, the stalactite, right? But the stalactite underneath it, directly underneath it. Now, after that, you just put a dirt block on top of that dripstone block. Then you add a bottle of water, those are really easy to make, those glass bottles. And just fill up a glass bottle of water, and you pour that glass bottle, or that bottle of water on that dirt block, and that will transform that dirt block into a mud block. Now, be patient, because I want to say it will take a minute or two. But that dripstone will naturally just suck the moisture out from that mud block is sitting on top of the dripstone through that stalagmite, and it will dry it out. I think that's really cool. It will dry it out, thus rendering it into a clay block for you. And I think it takes like a minute. I can't remember how long. I should have looked up the specifics, but just play around with it, guys, and you'll see. But isn't that amazing? And then you can take that clay block and use that process I taught you on how to make terracotta. I personally recommend placing like a large system of dripstone for this to be efficient, like a row of it. Like my factories have, my biggest one, like I said, in Jonestown, has 10 dripstone blocks with the dripstone connected underneath. So I have 10, I can set down like 10 clay blocks or mud blocks up there, 10 mud blocks up there and turn them into clay. And so they all kind of go at different times, turn into clay blocks, but that kind of keeps a continuous amount for me to just break apart. And then I just place it again. So I would suggest even doing 15 to 20 to make that even more efficient. Heck, go crazy. Do 100. If you've got that many, do a bunch and crank out the clay. Try it out and please let me know how much you're producing. Like, email me, I'm curious, or write it on my subreddit. I'd love to know. Now, let's move on to red sand, because red sand is part of this world, and I want to get into that. Now, I want to be brief on red sand because there's not a terrible amount of uses you can do with this. Now, at the surface of the Badlands rock formation, that is completely red sand. I've mentioned that throughout this. That's pretty much what you see at the surface level of this biome. Red sand everywhere. It's going to get all in your boots. You're going to have to empty those out. It's probably uncomfortable. You're just going to have to suck it up. But this red sand completely covers the place. It is a very pretty orange, though. It's a burnt orange to me, which is my favorite color of orange if I was to pick a favorite in the orange spectrum. And you could use this as a decorative block, which people do in whatever builds that you're planning on doing. But you can even use this for practical tech. Like, you can craft using red sand to make TNT. It just takes 5 gunpowder and 4 red sand blocks to craft a TNT block, and then you're ready to blow up whatever your little heart desires. So I need to start making more TNT. And who knows what I'll be doing with that. Or you could smelt this down, this red sand. You could smelt it down into a glass block, just like regular sand. So that's also handy. If you find a Badlands biome, then you have plenty of terracotta and glass. You will never fall short on that material. You'll fall short on fuel to make it more than anything. So bring plenty of wood if you're doing it out there in the Badlands. I'd export that back to a more wooded area. So now you know how terracotta is used to make glazed terracotta blocks, which can be used to add elaborate designs to your builds. Just get after it and let me know about those builds, because you can do some really cool things. And I thought it was cool to also touch base on the history of terracotta. And it's interesting to know that it used to be called hardened clay, I thought, in this section. I don't know. Just very interesting stuff. I like reading the history of this game and learning how everything has evolved. I also briefly talked about red sand, just there at the end, that you use it for TNT, decorative builds, and glass with it. So we covered pretty much all the minerals, like I said at the beginning, that I was going to get into. And so now I want to get into the sub-biomes of the Badlands, because that's very important to know. When I entered the Badlands, I had thought it was all one singular biome. I feel ignorant thinking that, because none of these biomes are just one singular thing. They're always broken down into sub-biomes. However, I thought it was just terracotta and red sand as far as I can see. No life but hostile mobs. But I was corrected by a Redditor who goes by the name of Whittle_Willow. And they said, quote, "There's a Badlands sub-biome that has oak trees," end quote. I commented back. I explained to him how the Sun King and I had trekked 3,000 blocks through the Badlands, literally building outposts, staying the night, waking up, trekking as far as we could through a 10-minute day, building another outpost, and just inchworming our way across that never-ending Badland. And we did not see anything but murderous beings. And so I had to look this up. I mean, it wasn't that I thought Whittle_Willow was lying, but I just needed to look it up, so I didn't think I was crazy. And Whittle_Willow was correct. And I have to say thank you for that advice. And what I discovered is called the Wooded Badlands. And let me go on to describe this. These biomes are very neat to find and a sight for sore eyes. For anybody trekking through the Badlands, this would be just a refuge to find. An oasis, trees and vegetation, just a welcoming sight for sure for anybody. And yes, I said trees, so pull out those axes and start collecting some wood, my friends. Like I said in the snow biomes, get the spruce trees, get the wood. You always want to get resources when you come upon them. Heck, build a refuge out there in this biome. It'd be good just to have a place for supplies to be stored for the next time you come out there. Alongside trees, there are more things to find in this slightly more elevated climate. According to Minecraft Wiki on Wooded Badlands, I want to go on to describe what they say. The color of the leaves and the vegetation will be a different color. In fact, they will be a darker shade than those of other places and other biomes. It gives the impression of a droughted area. It was intended for that. It is clearly a place that does not get much water. You're not going to see much water on these biomes unless you see a river carving through it, kind of like the Cheyenne River that I mentioned that carved the real Badlands. Yeah, so not much water out here. Keep that in mind. And I want to tell you that these biomes I just mentioned that are savanna-esque, but they aren't, with the darker vegetation. These are found at elevations around 103, and I actually found one of these the other day. And I forgot I had already discovered it, or I should say the Sun King did, in a long ago trek he did. There was a town up there, a village. And so I found one of these wooded badland biomes, and it is really neat. And it is a great place for natural resources, so collect up on those. Also, I want to go on to say the surface of these areas are composed of grass block, coarse dirt, and more gold. Gold, baby, gold. All the gold you would love are out here, or all the gold you would ever want, I should say, is out here in the Badlands. So I will say again, you need to go to the Badlands. Go find a Badland. And you will see, of course, this isn't hard to believe, tons of cacti will be found up here in this biome, and alongside with oak leaves, as Whittle_Willow said, and oak trees. Now let's move on to the second sub-biome, which are called the Eroded Badlands. This sub-biome, I think, is my favorite biome. This is my favorite biome, and I don't even have a place there. I don't have a village there. All I have is a fort, and it's not even that great of one. This is the place where you can find those amazing hoodoos that I covered earlier. I mean, in mine, it's across a river, and it looks beautiful. These hoodoos have to go up to, I don't know how many blocks they can go in the game. Like, some of these have to be well above 100 from the looks of it. But besides this place being a wealth of beauty, it has something even more precious to offer, and that's peaceful life here. It's the only sub-biome of having the chances of spawning chickens, cows, pigs, glow squid, and sheeps, which you will need the chickens for the meat, the feathers, for arrows, and quills, if you're into making books. You'll need those cows for, the beef. Again, take the chicken meat, take the beef meat, get all the meat you can, slaughter all the animals out of this biome as you can, collect up. But the cows will also provide that leather for all the things you can do with leather. And then you got the glowing squid if you're into the glowing item frames, and glowing squid are kind of rare, so this is a good place to find those. And you got the sheep for beds, so you can collect a lot of these mobs there, tether them, leash them, and bring them to wherever you build your place out in the Badlands, and you'll be set to be successful in this place. So this sub-biome here that I just listed, the Eroded Badlands, this is a very survivable place here. I hope you guys all find one of these. I actually, like I said, didn't find one and the one I described across that river isn't too far from Depot X. I had to leave the crater, and like I said, those hoodoos I found are just amazing. And I'm already starting the infrastructure for my next city build out there. And I plan on doing a hoodoo city, as I mentioned. But there is a caveat for the Badlands biome in general, guys. It is the most hostile one I have personally been in. And I can't forget it. Even when we were trekking out there, it was... I'm not even joking. There's so many hostile mobs. Every night that I'm in this, let's call it Depot Z now. It's the next one past X I just built. So Depot Z, every night I see witches, which I don't see too many witches. Even in my swamp biomes, I haven't seen too many witches, but out here, there's always 2 every night. And then it's just creepers galore. I've never been so paranoid building out here. I don't know how to describe it to you guys. It's just dangerous. There's zombie hordes, skeletons just decked in armor around me, and venomous spiders everywhere. I'm still fortifying this structure. I finally got a little garden of wheat, or I should say a little farm of wheat. It's not much, only like 10 blocks of wheat set up out there, which I'm proud of, but because there's not much water, but I had to put a wall around the building, keep all I'm not kidding, guys. Go out to Badlands, but bring a lot of armor and swords and arrows and whatnot, and be prepared. It's dangerous. Yeah, unfortunately for Java people, I just want to mention this: the Eroded Badlands do not spawn any domestic or friendly mobs, just the hostile ones. So be prepared before you enter those Badlands. Well, folks, that's the Badlands, and what a scene to take part in. I had an absolute blast researching this entire episode, and I have convinced myself that I am going to try to go back to South Dakota and hike through that Badlands National Park one day and check out all that stratified rock with all the beautiful bands of color running horizontally through them. I am also happy to now be able to relate real-world material with that in the game, such as the paleosouls that form the yellow mounds, which happen to be the yellow mustard-looking terracotta blocks in the Minecraft game in the Badlands. Now, I also plan on building my first city in the Badlands thanks to researching all of this. I plan on extending past Depot X, which I already did with one extra fort, now named, as I said, Z, all the way out to the Hoodoos. I'm going to go past Z, across that river to those Hoodoos, and power rail that thing up to the top and build a village up there. I think it'll be such a cool build and a fantastic town when it's all done. And I hope I inspired you guys to do the same thing, to build out there, because it's just amazing. And this brings me to one last thing before I let you all go this week, okay? If you have not noticed yet, I have released this episode alongside another one simultaneously today. 2. And the other one is called Realm News Clip. My first time trying this, folks. It's kind of a complimentary or supplemental episode to this one. And I want to go ahead and explain why. There's the Armadillo is going to be released in the upcoming update, which I believe is coming out maybe this summer. And the Armadillo is going to be part of this Badlands biome. It's more of a savanna creature, but it will be in the Badlands. And so I think that's important for me to describe. And so that's why I created this shorter show called Realm News Clip. And it is going to cover the Armadillo in this if you haven't already checked that out. And I'm also going to be delving into Minecrafters and their builds in the Badlands. So I will be reading people's comments in that Realm News Clips part of this addition to complement to this episode and giving my own opinion on those. And that's really fun, I think, because I found I had a person send me their blog of their Minecraft Badland Western town build. And I'm going to attach that blog to this Realm News Clip. And I urge you guys to check out that blog because this person did a great job with it. And it's really fun to read these people's comments of how they incorporate their builds into the Badlands and what they do in the Badlands in general. And so I think that's just fun. And I would love to hear your guys' comments on that too. And I hope you will enjoy the Realm News Clips. And I hope that you enjoyed this episode on Badlands. I really urge all of you to go find one of these majestic locations. If not for the view, do it for the gold, because we could always use more gold, right? And do it for the glazed terracotta. Do it for those amazing builds I know you guys like to do. And again, guys, it was my absolute pleasure for being your host, the Dark Lord. It makes me so happy that you guys listen to this show and you get a kick out. I just get a kick out of what I have to say in my explanations of Minecraft and relating it to the real world stories and facts. And thank you for listening. And until next Thursday, keep exploring, crafting, and using your imagination. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this episode, please hit that plus sign up there and follow me so you can get my latest weekly episodes sent directly to you. Send this podcast to all of your friends. Comment on each episode and take a poll. And don't forget to rate the show. Please don't forget that. It helps me. It informs me that I'm doing a good job. This will help me improve the show. Also, you can now email me at realmnews247@gmail.com. Also, you can find me at what was formerly called Twitter, but now is X, at realmnews247. There, you will find some of the cool articles and videos from my research, polls, and Minecraft-related content.